Welcome to Politics Personified, an IG live series presented by the Personified Group. Our featured expert guest is Donna McLeod, State Representative for Georgia House 105 and Congressional candidate for District 7. Let's get started.
Here she is. Yay!
I made it!
Awesome!
Hey! How's everybody doing?
Yes, absolutely. So we have, I think, like 2 or 3 viewers on. I just sent a message to a couple of people to join us. So, and you can hit your message box as well if you like. But we'll just
This is my first time, going live.
I know it. This is so exciting, so exciting, and I'm so glad that you are being, transparent with the followers and your constituents and just sharing your story as well as the importance of voting. So this is very exciting.
Absolutely.
I'm very excited for you.
I hope that this will be very educational, but also kind of fun too, and relaxed, and just not take politics all that's like serious, but just making sure that the seriousness is executed.
Right. But you know what? As we talked offline, voting is absolutely not just a serious matter, but it governs our day-to-day activities. So we want people to really understand when you don't go to the polls, when you don't exercise your right to vote, then change does not take place. So, but I know that you are going to be authentic and help us to understand in layman's terms why we need to get our behinds to the polls at every election.
Absolutely.
Not just for the president.
Absolutely not just for the president. There's a lot more things that happen on the local level that impacts you immediately than the presidency and that executive branch in the federal level. And so I'm going to start basics so that people can grasp why it is they so much need to vote. And one of the most important part of the government, and I remember when I wasn't elected, it seemed so big, it seems so broad, it seems so scary, but it really isn't that scary in a lot of ways. The government is actually predicated on you paying tax dollars. So you pay taxes, and I'm going to do it from the state level. You pay roughly, this state collects roughly about 30 billion with a B dollars of your dollars through income tax, sales tax, and fees. And then businesses also contribute. So let me tell you how it's broken down. 76%.
Okay, I'm gonna pause you 1 second, Donna. Look, everyone, she's ready to jump in head first with this knowledge information. I want to formally introduce you for those of you who are not familiar. This is a new series on IG in honor of Donna McLeod. This is called Politics Personified, and this is presented by the Personified Group, and our featured expert guest is State Representative Donna McLeod. She's currently State Representative in House District 105 here in Georgia, and she is running for Congresswoman in Georgia's 7th District. So the purpose of this series, the purpose of this forum, the purpose of this live tonight is for her to come on and educate followers, constituents all over, because it's the same whether you're in Georgia, Ohio, Michigan, to educate you about the electoral process. And so as you can see, she is excited and eager and ready to get started. So I'm actually going to let her lead this discussion tonight and jump right in. So Donna, did you want to first tell the followers a little bit about you and then jump in about the electoral system?
Okay, so let me start first by saying you all will notice an accent, so I'm going to get that out of the way. So I was born in Jamaica, and I grew up in Ontario, Canada. So let's get that part out of the way. I'm also a mom of an adult a woman who is 35 years old, and I have a grandson who is 6 years old. And I was elected to the Georgia House of Representatives back in 2018. I'm in my 2nd term, and it's been quite a journey. I think this is probably some of the most exciting years of the Georgia legislative branch. But what I really, really want to do is to make this a little bit more simple for everyone, so that you don't feel so, that it doesn't feel so large, that you don't feel like, oh my God, it's so distant and I don't quite understand it. It is actually in some ways simple. And once I explain, hopefully you will find it simple too. All your government belongs to the people because you pay for it. And let me just say that as a key word. You pay for it. All of us pay for the government. It's not like business, where businesses try to make a profit, right? So a business will create a product or a service and you pay for it, so that this way you will make a profit, right? And that's the whole idea of business. Well, government's a little bit different because it doesn't really ask you if once you start paying taxes, you're kind of obligated to pay taxes. And so in the state of Georgia, we have a $30 billion budget. And that's collected through pretty much 4 sources to get to the $30 billion. One is income tax. The other one is sales tax. So even if you don't pay income tax and you buy things and you're paying sales tax, you're contributing to the fiber of our government here in the state of Georgia. And then the third is fees. And fees can be, if you open a business, traffic, all of that, those are all accounted into fees on your electricity bill, all of that, those are all fees. And then the last pot is, so 76% income and sales, 12% from fees, and the last 12% is from businesses. So that equals 100% of the money that come in. Basically, the budget is divided into separate departments. So education being the largest department in the state of Georgia. But what I really want you to understand about government is to make sure that you understand that it fundamentally runs on your money. And so that is why it's so fundamentally important that you know what you get out there and vote. The reason you vote is you want people at the table that will actually manage your money and give you a return on your investment.
Okay, now I'm going to stop you right there, Donna. Return on your investment. Dig into that, because I've never heard an elected official say return on your investment. I only hear return on investment regarding small business owners. Sometimes on your taxes, you get those benefits. So can you dig a little deeper about return on your investment as a voter, as a registered voter? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so most people associate it, like, especially with the stock market, right?
Yes.
You're putting your money in the stock market. You're certainly not hoping to lose money. You're trying to get a return on the investment that you make. Well, this is the same thing with our government. When you put that money into the government, you should expect a return on investment. And what I mean by in return on investment is services. The government provides services. One of them happens to be education for a lot of our students. But the fact that you ride on roads that are actually paved, that's also a service that we all say we want to have nice roads. The fact that we pay into our military, that's a service that we're paying into because we want to, have protection.
Right.
And so those are all services. Clean air, people think it's automatic. Clean air is not automatic, right? Because I remember when I was a child back in the 80s, I remember we had acid rain. And acid rain used to be where companies and I'm a chemical engineer by profession, by the way. So
Okay.
I'm not just an elected official. I'm an engineer, chemical engineer. They would actually manufacture products like sulfuric acid, nitric acid, and they wouldn't really care about where it went. So a lot of time they would just go out through like an air stack in the factory, and it would end up back into the atmosphere. And so it come when it rained, it would actually come down in acid rain. And back then, like in the early 80s, most of the cars were made of metal. And
Right.
it
That's
used to
true.
rust the cars. And people, that's what really created the EPA. When those kind of environmental issues happen, right? The EPA was created to kind of make sure that we don't do that anymore. They had to find ways to filter that sulfuric and nitric acid without it going into the atmosphere. So things like that. The government provides services like food inspection. Okay, I know that think a lot about it, but even food inspection, so that the food that's coming on your table is safe and won't harm you. And so those are the things that our government should be paying for, and we get a return on that investment. And so
Awesome.
that's what I mean by return on investment.
Wow, that's a lot of information. I mean, I never thought about that. I never thought about the acid rain, never thought about the cards and the rust and even our food. You know, we talk about organic products. I personally try to buy organic as much as I can afford to, but just the fact that, you know, we are investing in those services. And
Yes.
so when we elect specific individuals, they are the ones that are advocating to make sure we have the quality product available to us and quality services.
Correct.
Very insightful. Appreciate that. Okay, so continue to tell us more about the process.
So, you know, again, when we're down at the Capitol and you have good people on your behalf, you challenge where the budget, because the budget actually is a reflection of your values, what you believe in. And so just like your household, what do you spend the most money on, right? That's usually tells your priorities. Well, our budget should tell our priorities. So basically, we've said that the House of Representatives and the Senate in Georgia, our number one funding responsibility is education. So one of the things I've been pushing back as a legislator this year is because the funding formula for it's called the Quality Basic Education Formula. The last time that formula was actually updated in Georgia was 1985.
1985.
1985. I live in Gwinnett County, and if you ever come through Gwinnett County, if you ever hear 30 years ago, 40 years ago, Gwinnett County doesn't look anything like it did even 30 years ago. And just the sheer population growth and the diversity in the population and the different needs. We have a lot more children that have special needs that are actually in the school system now. We have children with English as a second language. We have kids that are below the poverty line. And so it's important that we actually provide services to everyone, because everyone is paying their tax dollars into this. And so the QBE formula, 1985. So my colleagues on the other side, I happen to be a Democrat, my colleagues on the other side, the Republicans, they have been claiming that they are fully funding public education. That is, I guess that is misleading at best, because what they're saying is they're fully funding the formula that was 1985.
Okay.
It has not been updated since 1985, so it is not meeting the needs, and it's not providing all the services that are required. Anybody who has had a child that has had IEP, all of that funding comes from the federal government. We are, as a state, we're not putting any money into the special needs part. So I think this is where I'm drawing the line. I'm saying, look, we need to look at this formula, make this formula work for everyone. So I introduced some legislation this year, HB 71, to actually do a pilot program to look into that. But here's the even more critical part of that is that when we don't fund the school system, a lot of kids fall in the crack, right? And a lot of kids fall out. And what we do is then create a more of a pathway from the prison to school pipeline, right? So if a child is not reading by like grade 3, it's more likely that they're going to give up and then get into a situation where they shouldn't be and cause themselves more issues. And the school to prison pipeline is then broadened. We also, in our budget, it's another department, is detention. And in that detention, we have state-run prisons and we have local prisons, but in as it pertains to the state, we fund state-run prison as well. But here's the other part that we also fund, which is something I have a really big problem with. We are funding 5 private prisons. We have allocated $140 million to private prison. So that tells me a bit about the priorities of the state when it comes, if you're not willing to take that money to put into education, you're willing to basically use it for private prison, you're actually telling me a narrative about what you're trying to do. And so, pushing back on that was very, very important to me this session.
Okay, well, let's go back to the QBE. Okay, so you mentioned that you introduced legislation this year. I think you said HB 71, if I'm
Yes,
correct.
yes.
Tell us more about HB 71. How does that impact the current QBE system? And in your role as a legislator, how is that going to affect the positive change that people need to hear about?
So the reason why I end up doing HB 71 is when I initially started my very first year of session it was 2019, and I had some young people that were my legislative aid, and what happened was the I guess the lobbyists for the school system here in Gwinnett came down to the Capitol and said, "Hey, Representative McLeod, we still need some money for the cafeteria workers and for the school bus drivers." And I was like, he said, "Can you ask Chairman England how we can get some more money?" And I thought to myself, "We need more money? I thought we fully funded QBE." And he said, "No, we're still having some issues." So, okay. So I went over to the chairman. I said, "Look, our school system needs some more money." And he said, "Okay, I'll look into it." But that's when I realized there was a problem. I ended up going around looking for the reason why this was happening. Found out that there was actually a study done in 2015 that clearly stated that this was an issue. There was a funding issue. And so we took that study and we actually summarized it and created this bill, HB 71. And what it would do is it's a study program to look at 6 schools, to look at different criteria and their weights, like English as a second language and kids with special needs. So we actually, put some of the onus of making sure that our children with special needs is also got some money from the state. And so that's what we did.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So then now let's transition back to the 140 million, I think you mentioned, of funds that are going towards private prisons here in Georgia. And so talk to us about what's your plan to take some of that money and put it where it, should be appropriated, which is public schools, healthcare, perhaps.
Yes.
Maybe infrastructure. Tell us about that, your plan for that.
Yes. So I introduced a piece of legislation to actually remove that funding altogether. They claim it's because the private prisons help them to house people. But if you're investing in education early, having good health care, good nutrition, you're actually going to cut down on that because you're going to have a healthier society, a thriving society, rather than one that is, basically destined to fail because you've already set it up. You've already said, I know you're going to fail, so I'm going to invest in that failure right now instead of saying I'm going to invest in ensuring that it's a success. So that's kind of where, and so that money, that $140 million, could go in so many other programs. In fact, some of the departments, the people that work there, they're making like $28,000 a year, $30,000 a year. Most people can't live off of that, and they're usually asking for kids, young people with graduate degrees, masters.
For the qualifications.
Exactly, and you want to pay them $30,000. That's crazy.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. So now, as you are transitioning from an experienced, elected official locally in Gwinnett County, and now are ready to take the next leap at the national level as Congresswoman, can you explain to us some of your platform, your vision as to what you plan to do to continue to grow this District 7, Georgia's 7th district? What are your plans for that?
So, one of the things, state legislation is very, very powerful legislation. And I always I try to let people see the magnitude of state regulations and laws by the fact that states like Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama actually encoded slavery, right? So it was a law. And if you broke the law by trying to allow anyone to escape slavery, or you try to house somebody who was enslaved, you were
Mhm.
breaking laws. And so we need to understand how they interact with each other. So federal laws are usually created because the state has created some egregious law or something that's really, really bad. So the federal government usually steps in and usually has to create an additional set of laws. So I would like, you know, what I would like to see is, and because I was part of the state house legislation, I'd like to see if we see laws like this coming up in the state, that we are proactive at the federal level.
Mhm.
Obviously, the goal is to not allow laws like the bad laws to become, you know, where you have to live by it because it's law. You want to stop those, but sometimes you're not able to stop it. But I think if you're working with folks at the state level, it'll be a great thing that we have that mutual relationship of stopping, of at least having something combating a bad state law.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. So you are, again, a resident of the 7th District, have lived in the 7th District for 20 plus years. You are an elected official representing at the state level, District 105, which is still essentially in the same community. Yes. All right. So tell us, why is it important, this election, this primary election, why it's important that people go out and vote? Before they go out and vote, why is it important for them to register? Why is it important for them to check their registration status? Kind of piggyback on why all this valuable information you're sharing with us about the electoral process. How can we apply this? What steps do we need to take to be responsible constituents and responsible voters in the electoral system that was set up for us, right? Mm-hmm. So that we can govern ourselves, essentially. Tell us about those important steps that need to take place.
One of the things I want to point out to everyone is the process of voting. The process itself is nonpartisan. When you vote, it becomes partisan, but the actual mechanism to get you to vote is nonpartisan. And one of the things that I want to tell folks, you need to make sure you're registered to vote, of course, and that you can do at vote.org or at mvp.sos.ga.gov. Vote.org will actually give you several different options. Register, check your status. So get registered to vote if you're not registered to vote. The state of Georgia has purged a lot of people off the voter roll. Please check your voter status. Make sure you're still a registered voter. And because again, if you're not a registered voter, you can't participate in the process. So once you've checked all of that, you want to also make sure you know where you're going to be voting. Make a plan to vote. Are you going to be voting in person? Are you going to vote by mail? Vote absentee. In the state of Georgia, it's called absentee voting. You're going to vote absentee, in person, or you're going to early vote. And there will be opportunities to early vote. And also in most of the counties, you will have the opportunity to do Sunday voting, which is something I was instrumental in doing in the 7th, in getting Sunday voting in the 7th District. We recently in the 2021 session, we passed SB 202. Again, a law that was predicated on a lie. But we do have it. It's now law. And that's what I've just said, everybody. If once the state passed a law and there's no federal law to combat it, the state law stands. So we still have not had a full election based on that law being passed in 2021. So we have a lot. We have to make sure that we're making these plans to vote. They've criminalized, food and drink, or line warming. So they've literally said that could be criminalized. So if you're found holding a space in line for somebody, you could be charged criminally for it. And so those are things that we need to be mindful of. It is important that everybody get out there and vote, because I wouldn't be a state legislator if people weren't willing to vote, right? So it's not magic. And I'm certainly not, I didn't come with any silver spoon.
We lost the sound, Donna.
People listened. They were able to say, I connect to that person, And I think that she'd be a good person to be my voice. And again, you are hiring us, right? This is not, oh, I'm just going to be a state legislator. When that's why you see people come around and say, politicians always come around when they're wanting to be getting hired. Yeah, they do. But again, that's just the first part. If they are hired and you do hire them, the other part is to keep them accountable as well. Make sure you keep them accountable. That's also your job.
Yes, awesome. Okay, well, I love it. So again, everyone, specifically in the state of Georgia, make sure you check your registration status. And the reason why I say the state of Georgia, because Donna McLeod, Representative Donna McLeod, she's a current elected official. She's running for Congress, which we know is a national level. And she wants to make sure that everyone gets out and check their registration status so that you can have the opportunity to exercise your voice, exercise your right to vote. And the purpose, again, of Politics Personified, this series, is to educate you as constituents, educate you as neighbors, educate you as legally aged voters. Some of you may not be registered to vote and you are of age, but to encourage you to get out, get registered, and make your voice be known. Understand that the elected officials, such as Representative McLeod, works for the people. It's not the other way around. She was elected along with all the other elected officials. So again, no matter what state or city that you reside in, those elected officials, you put them in office. And you also put them in office when you don't vote. Yes, so keep that in mind. You place them in office when you don't exercise your right to vote. You give up that right to make that decision of who leads you. So it's very critical. You continue to do your research on the various candidates. We will be back again next week.
Let me add one thing before we sign off, a couple of things. So one of the things is down ballot voting, right?
Yes.
People get excited usually about a specific person, but no one person actually runs the government, right? There's 3 separate branches of government, and on your ballot it is actually set up that way in 3 different parts. At the very top of your ballot will be your executive branch. In the middle of the ballot will be your legislative branch, so your House, Senate, or if it's in the county, your county commissioners. Those are all part of the legislative branch in different parts of your city, county, and your state. And then at the very bottom, you will find judicial, and that the judicial branch is nonpartisan branch. We'll get more into some of those actual elections as time goes, but the judicial branch, and then even further down the ballot could be ballot questions. And those are also important because it will determine, let's say there's a referendum on the ballot for gambling. Well, if you didn't put your voice in and all of a sudden you have gambling and you didn't like it, that's too late. It's on the ballot, so then it will be basically something that you will have based on the need of what the majority says. So that's why it's so important to be voting, because the people that vote is the people that most politicians will listen to, because they're the ones that got them elected. And so the more you participate, the more you will actually get your voice heard. And there's a distinction between primary voting and election day voting. And I think we'll be talking more about that as the series go along. But it's so important for you to understand the process.
Absolutely. And we absolutely appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule, serving the community. Again, this is State Representative Donna McLeod. She's currently representative in Georgia's House District 105, but she's running for Congress. She's running for Congress in Georgia's 7th district. And it's important for her to educate constituents and voters all over, but specifically here in Georgia, about the importance of exercising your right to vote and understanding the legislative process so that you can be more confident and comfortable to get out and vote. So we will be back, as she stated, we'll be back next week. We'll dig into more topics and dig deeper. If you have any questions, you can always send me a direct message on the Personified group. You can also direct message Donna for Congress. She's on IG, she's on Facebook. She has a YouTube channel. She's on Twitter. So please go and follow her as well. She's very transparent, very authentic. She's willing to answer any questions that you may have. But please make sure you tell a friend to join us next week as we continue this series of Politics Personified. Again, thank you everyone for joining us, and have a good night.
And please visit my website, www.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you, Donna, for that plug. Yes, make sure you support her campaign for Congress at donnamcleod.com. All right, have a good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Good night.